We also want to bring in Rob Oliver. He's a senior research analyst at Baird. And Rob, when you take a look really at what Mark Benioff was just saying, this is a huge bet by Salesforce on Slack. He just told Julia that it's a match made in heaven. What do you think? Is this a smart move by Salesforce to be buying Slack and for that price tag of $27.7 billion?
Well, thanks, Shauna. I think timing does matter, and Julia alluded to this in her comments. I mean, Mark Benioff was pretty adamant making his own statement last quarter about the state of the mergers and acquisitions environment. He left investors with the idea that after having acquired MuleSoft and after having acquired Tableau, they had a lot of internal work to do to leverage and get the most out of those acquisitions. And within a quarter, they turned around and made the largest acquisition in their history for $28 billion. And that's if you assume that they could double the revenues. And we're going to learn more about that, I'm sure, next week at the Analyst Day. We will get many details at the Analyst Day. I'm sure investors are hungry for them. And the stock action today certainly indicates that they don't feel satisfied about that. But even if you assume that they would double Slack revenue, which is the same commitment that they gave on MuleSoft, you're still talking about a very high teens revenue multiple on something that investors just are uncertain about. The other issue here, I think, is margins. And the company margins have been a bugaboo for Salesforce in the past. You've got a $25 billion run rate company with mid to upper teens operating margins. And for many investors, that's not acceptable. The company had committed to higher margins each of the years that they made the acquisitions of Tableau and MuleSoft. The margin was clawed back. The company committed to giving margin even with acquisitions, and they started to give that over the last couple of quarters. Investors are encouraged. Now they're going to question that again. So I think that's also playing into the scenario today.
So, Rob, let me break this down to a very simple question. If the world is going to go back to the office, let's assume it's only 50 to 60% the way it was before. You cannot have the kind of revenue growth that Benioff is talking about. He's not going to get his goal anytime soon. 50 billion sounds great, but that's what investors are reacting to today, isn't it?
I'm not so sure, Adam. I think what they're reacting to today is much more the setup on the acquisition itself. I think the 50 billion number, Salesforce has always given pie in the sky numbers. Most recently, they had talked about a $40 billion revenue number. These are numbers that are always long-term targets and never official guidance. I really think the bigger issue today for Salesforce is how Slack fits. People want to understand that. Now, personally, my view is that Salesforce has been one of the great acquirers in software. Software companies always make acquisitions. I mean, going back to the late 90s, software has been a highly acquisitive sector. Most acquisitions don't get properly leveraged. And you certainly can just look at Oracle as an example for that. They've destroyed a lot of value over the years. Salesforce is a company that's created value through their acquisitions. You can look back at Heroku as a great example. More recently, MuleSoft, we believe, is having a lot of success. Tableau, the issue with this one is not whether Slack is a fantastic technology. It's not whether it addresses a huge need, which I think it does, and we can talk about that. It's whether the $28 billion price target is justified in the near term, given where the stock had run to. And recall one other thing, stock's down 8% today, at least it was when I came on your program. Stock was up 25% in one day on a report 2 quarters ago on a $200 billion company. So we need to put today's move in perspective.
And going off of that, just putting everything in perspective, I also want to bring up the fact that President and CFO Mark Hawkins, he's going to be retiring in January. I know going through your notes, you've been a big fan of him. Do you see any reason to be concerned or worried about his departure and what that could mean for the direction of the company going forward?
I don't, Shauna. I don't. Salesforce has the deepest bench of any any software company that I follow and have known. Mark Benioff collects talent at every level. There's probably 15 people within his company that could be CEOs of other companies, probably more. Huge fans of Mark Hawkins. Did a great job at Autodesk, has done a fantastic job at Salesforce, but don't see any issues with that transition. And I think we'll get an introduction to the new CFO next week at the Analyst Day. She has been on the calls as well lately, so I don't think she'll be entirely new to investors, but I don't think that's playing into the stock action today really at all.
All right, with shares off just around 8.5% right now, with just around 40 minutes left in the trading day. Rob Oliver, Senior Research Analyst at Baird. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us.